This is Bix Weir with Roota.com. Today I want to talk about Ruda and the 9/11 conspiracy, the truth behind 9/11, and how it relates to Ruda. So anybody out there who doesn't know what went on on 9/11, that it wasn't just 19 hijackers, if you don't know that, you haven't even tried to find out the truth. Yes, it's conspiracy. A conspiracy is two or more people colluding to do something illegal. Even the official story is, quote, a conspiracy. So get over that word. But yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about 9/11 insider conspiracy and all that, there's 10 million videos and YouTube uh, shorts and movies about it. It's obvious that it was done to us for certain purposes. There's a great article on my website in the resources tab. Um, it's called Collateral Damage, and it's a true story behind what was going on 9/11. This report was written, I believe, by the Office of Naval Intelligence, the ONI, that was doing a lot of the investigations into all kinds of bad guy stuff. Read the article. It names the people, the places, how it was all done. It's amazingly obvious for anybody to see that the story that we're told is completely different. So yeah, read that article, but also open your Wishes and Rainbows comic book, the comic book from the Federal Reserve Bank, and you're going to see 9/11 right there in the middle of it. And I'm going to show you where it is and kind of what I think it means. So these are the covers. If you followed my work at all at Road to Ruda, these are the covers of the two comic books that the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston released. They're both based off an article written in 1979 by a woman who worked at the Fed Boston, Deborah Carpenter Beck. And it was a short story, not as much hidden meaning in that short story as was put into these comics, but there is a lot. Really interesting. You can find that story. It's hard to find actually the original short story. I will post it. I have a copy of it. I will post it in the resources tab of the Road to Ruda website, so you can check it out. I haven't found that much exciting and conspiratorial about it, other than the overall concept of Root A, who is Ruda, where that name came from, things like that. But that's all in the comic books as well. So if you look at the 1981 comic book released by the Fed, it's on the left side there. It even looks kind of old. I do have a couple of these. They're hard to find. When the Road to Ruda theory gets proven to be true, these comic books are going to be worth a whole heck of a lot of money. So hang on to them if you have them. The one on the right is the comic book released on January 1st, 2007 by the Fed. And when they released it on their website, it was with a huge red exclamation point. Gigantic, much bigger typeface than anything on the page. So yes, there is something unique and different about it. When I started pointing that out, they removed the big red exclamation point, but that you can still find the 2007 version on the Fed Boston website, and I'll show you where. So on the left side, let's look at the right side first. The right side is the actual page at the Fed Boston website. Just go to the Fed Boston website and do a search for Wishes and Rainbows. It'll come up with that link right there on the top right, and it also has a link to the Road to Ruda, a teacher's guide, which is the teacher's guide for the comic book. And as you can tell by the bottom, right below that on the right side, bottom right, that's from the inside cover of the Fed comic book. Just for those people who don't think that the Federal Reserve Bank makes any comic books at all, there it is, right there, their name. And on the left side, you see the link to the original comic, the one that was released in 1981. It was actually scanned and put on PDF file at the University of Omaha in their economic education website. You could just, all you have to do is do a Google search for Wishes and Rainbows, and both of those will come up, and you could just click on the links and find the PDFs of the comics. If you can find the real thing, the hard copy, the Fed doesn't make hard copies anymore. They stopped that about 2 years ago, but they're out there. and track it down and hang on to those. But you can see from the on the left, the bottom there, it's the Federal Reserve, adopted by Stephen DeVoe, who was the computer expert at the Fed in the 1970s and 80s. And I've done a lot of work, and he worked for the military. Um, and he's the guy who basically ran with the whole idea of the road to Ruda. His expertise is project implementation. This was his big project. Control the monetary system while we are in an unbacked fiat system using computers and derivatives as per Alan Greenspan. They work together, and then I think they split off into different kind of uh, career objectives. Greenspan obviously went to the Fed in 1987. Everybody was blown away about that Alan Greenspan, the king gold bug, was named as the chairman of the Fed by Ronald Reagan in 1987. But if you know about the road to Ruda, it all makes sense. It makes 100% sense because he was rigging the computers with Arthur Burns back in the 60s and 70s to enable us to go off a gold standard. And the whole idea, I'll show you what it's based off, but the whole idea was to destroy the monetary system by printing as much money as you could, soaking up all the benefits, and then return to a gold standard. And here's one of the most important frames within this comic. It is Ruda, who's the little girl there, and their grandmother, who is actually, Ruda is Alan Greenspan, and the grandmother is Arthur Burns. Alan Greenspan's mentor in college and at that time of his life was Arthur Burns, the head of the Federal Reserve Bank. They worked together, and they worked together with computers. And it was an amazing thing. Arthur Burns always wanted to go back onto the gold standard, but he wasn't able to politically. And then he hired Alan Greenspan to run the computer programs that got us to where we are today. And it's a really interesting part of the comic because you can see by what Ruda's grandma is telling Ruda. She's saying, because the people who live in Colorland are very big, with that big bold writing, and might accidentally step on any pebble person who visits. All our people are afraid to go there. Now, who could the Federal Reserve Bank be afraid of? Of course, it's the bad guys in the shadow government that are being revealed now. And besides, nobody knows how to get there, how to reach Colorland. Some say you can get there through the caves near Cobblestone Canyon. And from my other work with the gold in the Grand Canyon, it is clear to me that that's where the main storage of deep storage gold is for the United States, along with other places like Chocolate Mountain in California. But the Grand Canyon has been there since the Grand Canyon gold has been there waiting for us since 1904, 1905, when they first discovered it. And the front page of the New York Times in 1912 said, "Vast riches found in the Grand Canyon," and they were moving all this machinery and equipment there, and then they just stopped. I'm actually writing a book about that now. The reason they stopped is the funding was cut off and the area was sealed by the military. So you still can't go into that area of the Grand Canyon. The Marines are in charge of guarding it, actually. But just if this comic book is meant to only be an educational tool for little kids in grammar school who want to learn about scarcity and the need for scarcity in a monetary system, this is frightening stuff that the grandma is telling the little girl that these big people are going to step on the little people, and you should be afraid of them. And then, of course, Ruda says, "I'm not afraid, Grandma. I often go play in those caves, and someday I will find the way to Colorland and bring back some colors, bring back some of those colors." Really interesting. This is the slide that really got me hooked. And because it is so intriguing, and so if you're just thinking that you're a parent reading this to your baby or a young child, it's scary stuff. But cartoons and comics are often deal with scary themes. But this one, coming from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, was about as odd as they get. So moving on, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about there's a link between Ruda and 9/11. And I believe, as I wrote in my first article about Ruda, that 9/11 was the reason this whole plan to kind of drag on the unbacked monetary system that Greenspan and Stephen DeVoe were working for the past 40, 50 years. The reason they decided to pull the plug and stop and try to crash the system is because of what happened on 9/11. And if you read the report, Collateral Damage, that's just in the resources tab at road2roda.com, you'll see that it's the entire one of the main reasons. There were a lot of reasons behind 9/11, but one of the main reasons were these gold-backed bonds that were maturing on September 12th. They're called Brady bonds. That apparently they didn't have the gold, so it was all a kind of a distraction, so they can just kind of stir up the monetary system, steal the money basically, and fudge the books, and no one can see it because 9/11 was so chaotic. Very sad, but it all comes back to lying to the people about the monetary system. 9/11 would not have happened if the monetary powers, in the 1960s after they took out Kennedy, they knew what was going on. They could have stopped everything, arrested the people that killed Kennedy, and were up front with the people of the world, and especially within the United States, that these bad guys are here running the show. But no, they didn't. They figured out a way they could rig the system to delay it, to soak up more benefits. And I mean, yeah, I think they're good guys who decided to work this plan, but ultimately you can trace back the cause of 9/11 was because they kept the system going. They should have pulled the plug a long, long, long time ago, but they did not. And they can say they're as upfront, upstanding citizens all they want, but at the end of the day, 9/11 would not have happened had we had an honest and fair monetary system. So anyway, in this picture, Ruda is deciding how to allocate money. Basically, is the metaphor. How is she going to allocate money to all the people once they have a scarce resource? And the formula she's writing in the ground, it was really interesting to me because you got E equals mc squared, which is the theory of special relativity. That's Einstein's theory. And for those who didn't know it, the guy John Kemeny, who invented basic computing back in the 1960s, was the math assistant to Albert Einstein. Very interesting. When he was like 21, 22 years old, and he was Albert Einstein's math assistant, meaning, when Einstein didn't have time to do all these equations, he just gave them to John Kennedy, a little 21, 22-year-old kid, basically, and he did his math. But anyway, these what Ruda was writing in the sand was this economic theory from the 1960s called On the Road to the Golden Age. And it has to do with the golden rule theory of allocating assets to future generations. And the final conclusion of this theory is that you should run the monetary system to infinity. And you can see the infinity sign right there, the G and P signs. There's a thing, it looks like a 3 squared over a 7. That's a T actually under it for time. And then it's double underscored the infinity sign. Anyway, there's a lot of formulas on how to allocate assets, but this one just lined up perfectly. This guy, Bertil Nosland, is the guy who wrote it. And remember, this is back in the 1960s when Alan Greenspan was writing economic formulas. In economic formulas during his schooling, and he was computer programming, inventing Root A, which, as I've spoken about many times, is the basis of all financial computing. And the root sign, for those of you computer programmers, all know that root is the very beginning of any kind of tree. You build down off that in a computer program. Root A being the very first one. So yeah, that's kind of how it all went. So what blew me away was comparing the two, and I didn't discover this until later, comparing the two comic book entries of this particular frame. Because in this frame, Ruda is writing this economic formula on the road to the golden age. But in the new version, the 2007 version, look what Ruda writes. Can you see it? Up top? Upside down? 11 plus 9. And I've zoomed in many times. It's not a 7. There's a uh, little tiny line in there, so it is a 9. And it's, they tried to kind of disguise the 11, but you can clearly see the 11 and the plus sign. And then on the right, you can see the Islamic crescent moon and a flower. So, yeah, the when you go back and forth between these slides, you can clearly see the difference of what Ruda is writing in the sand. Everything else in the book is exactly the same. Every line, even when they highlight the word big and they underline certain things, it's all the same. There's actually only two differences. This is one of the differences, and another difference was something on another page. It talked about the flowers having green stems, alluding to the green paperback, the green U.S. dollar. One in the old version, it was underlined the word green. In the new version, the underline is gone. So that was the only other change. I don't think it's a big thing, but it might have to do with the changing out of the colors of our bills. Obviously now we're moving into different colors, so who knows about that? I don't think it's all that important. This is though what Ruda writes in the sand here, which is on the road to the golden age, and then what Ruda writes in the sand here, which is 11 plus 9. And then that's the headline of Collateral Damage, the report written by the Office of Naval Intelligence. The Office of Naval Intelligence was located at the exact spot at the Pentagon where they supposedly flew a plane into that spot. And Office of Naval Intelligence was doing all kinds of investigations into the bad guys, the military industrial complex, the rigging of the gold market. That missile hit the exact spot at the Pentagon, and many of the people were killed who worked for this Office of Naval Intelligence. And I think they released this report basically to say it's time to take you down. And I think the same thing is going on with what Ruda's writing in the sand. It's time to end the rigging of the markets and giving these bad guys, you know, the ability to pull off stunts like 9/11. And I really think this is signifying the end. And as you can see from what's going on today with the uh, shadow government and Trump winning the election, and then now he's in the process of purging all these criminals out of our government, which is great, and it's a great sign for our future. And yeah, there's that link to Ruda and 9/11 right written in the sand, and I think 9/11 was the kind of the last straw, so that the good guys have finally said enough is enough, and we're going to take back our country. My name is Bix Weir. I run roadtoruda.com. Make sure you subscribe to my videos, and we are going to expose these guys day after day. It's going to come out, and it's very exciting. Talk to you later.